All right, let's dive right into an absolutely incredible piece of sports history today. We're looking at a monumental clash at the 1958 World Cup. This is a story of sheer grit, of destiny, a massive historical what if, and honestly, the birth of a global icon. I mean, picture this scenario. What actually happens when a gritty underdog defense, who are literally playing the tournament of their lives, collides head-on with a teenager who is just moments away from becoming global football's greatest superstar? The tension of this matchup was just palpable. And it all comes down to razor-thin margins, right? Just listen to Welsh defender Mel Charles, who, by the way, was voted the best center half at that World Cup. He's reflecting here on the exact fraction of a second the match slipped away. An inch. Literally 1 inch is all that separated a miraculous Welsh triumph from a Brazilian fairy tale. Section 1. The historic quarter-final clash. June 19, 1958. Section 2. Wales's incredible World Cup run. The path of attrition. So, to really grasp the weight of this matchup, we've got to rewind a bit to the earlier stages of the tournament in Sweden. Wales didn't just waltz into the quarterfinals, they survived an absolute gauntlet. After grinding out 3 straight draws in the group stage against Sweden, Mexico, and Hungary, they were forced into a vicious playoff match against Hungary just to decide second place. Now, the Welsh showed incredible resilience, coming from behind to win 2-1, but that victory came at a massive, massive cost. Section 3. The missing Welsh giant. The massive historical what-if. Here is the kicker. That brutal playoff win against Hungary robbed Wales of their absolute best player right before the biggest match of their lives. We're talking about John Charles. He was this versatile titan for Wales, a genuinely world-class player who was equally terrifying as an attacker or a defender. But during those matches against Hungary, he was brutally targeted. I mean, they quite literally kicked lumps out of him. The resulting injury kept him out of the quarterfinal, and it creates one of the most fascinating what-ifs in the history of international sports. His own brother, Mel Charles, who was anchoring the defense, firmly believed this. Mel was absolutely confident that with his brother on the pitch, Wales would have possessed the firepower and the sheer presence needed to conquer the Brazilian juggernaut. It's this lingering, tantalizing question that Welsh fans have pondered for decades. Section 4. Enter the 17-year-old phenom, Brazil's desperate gamble. Meanwhile, over in the Brazilian camp, things were incredibly tense. They were facing immense pressure to overcome the haunting trauma of the Maracanazo, their absolutely devastating and shocking loss on home soil at the 1950 World Cup. They were desperate for redemption, willing to try anything, and their gamble rested on a number, 17. At just 17 years old, an unknown kid from Tres Corações named Edson Arantes do Nascimento was about to be thrust onto the world stage. We all know him now, of course, as Pelé. Now, Brazil's preparation wasn't just left to chance. They operated under the Paulo Machado de Carvalho plan. This mandated drafting only the most physically prepared players and adopting a highly modern professional stance. And Pelé fit right into this ethos. Despite being so young, he had already absorbed this modern work ethic, spending countless solitary hours training in the Santos Club gymnasium, just perfecting his jumping, his heading, his agility. But this is where the story gets almost unbelievable. As part of this hyper-professional approach, Brazil employed a psychologist using psychometric tests originally designed for São Paulo bus drivers. I'm serious. The results? The psychologist emphatically stated the 17-year-old Pelé was obviously infantile and completely lacked fighting spirit. His teammate, the legendary Garrincha, was flat-out deemed an idiot. The official recommendation was to leave them both on the bench. Thankfully for the history of the sport, Coach Vicente Fiola completely ignored the report. He famously stated the doctor knew nothing about football, played them anyway, and that one decision changed everything. So, when you contrast these two teams right before kickoff, it reveals a truly cinematic clash of styles and circumstances. On one side, you have Wales, battered, missing their star player, relying entirely on a stubborn physical defense. On the other side, Brazil, desperate for national redemption, pioneering a brilliant multiracial squad, and pinning their hopes on a teenager the team doctors specifically warned them not to play. Section 5. The 66th minute. Breaking the Welsh resistance. When the whistle blew, that Welsh defense valiantly held back 5 dazzling Brazilian forwards. For over an hour, they frustrated the absolute best attack in the world, until the 66th minute. That's when the resilient Welsh wall finally cracked. Let's break down exactly how a teenager became the youngest scorer in World Cup history.
Pelé receives a headed pass from Didi. With his back to the goal, he controls the ball on his chest. Then he just impudently flicks the ball behind him, completely escaping the tight handcuffs of the Welsh defender, and volleys the bouncing ball perfectly into the bottom corner of the net. It was just a staggering display of dexterity. The sheer agility and majestic elevation of Pelé left onlookers totally mesmerized. Journalist Peter Lorenzo beautifully described him during the tournament as a wriggling shadow of black lightning. This right here was the very definition of football art, a style relying heavily on technique, improvisation, and rhythm, utterly confounding the opposition. Section 6. Two very different aftermaths: the birth of a legend and a quiet return. The final whistle blew on a 1-0 Brazilian victory, and that single, beautiful goal launched two entirely different historical trajectories. For Brazil, this was the explosive birth of a legend. Pelé was overwhelmed by the emotion of scoring for his country at 17. He would go on to score a hat-trick in the semifinals, 2 more in the final, and eventually win 3 World Cups, permanently cementing his status as the king of the sport. But that 1958 victory did way more than win a trophy. It genuinely transformed Brazilian society. It took a sport originally imported from the British and completely reshaped it into a celebrated, multiracial symbol of Brazilian national identity. The racial prejudices that flared up after their 1950 loss were inverted, and the diverse artistic style of the 1958 team became a point of massive national pride. Conversely, the aftermath for Wales was remarkably quiet. The battered, exhausted, yet heroic Welsh team arrived back at Swansea Station to a total lack of fanfare. There were no open-top bus parades. In fact, a local ticket collector, completely unaware they had just played in a historic World Cup quarterfinal against the eventual champions, simply looked at them and asked if they had been on holiday. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought about pressure and potential. If the 17-year-old kid who would become the undisputed king of football was once deemed too infantile and lacking fighting spirit by standardized tests, what other incredible potential in the world is hiding right now behind a completely misunderstood evaluation? It's a powerful reminder that true brilliance often defies the metrics we use to measure it.